We do have the train engineer we were so fortunate to talk to earlier back with us live on the phone. Robert Bregent, thank you so much. I'm sure that you're able to see now this aerial view of this Amtrak train number 501 that came off the tracks. What a perspective that we now have as we look from Sky King. Tell us what you see now that you're looking at this from above.
Well, I see that the train actually was not a push-pull train. It had one of the new Siemens Charger locomotives on the front end. So there was a locomotive in front and a locomotive in back. But again, I may stress by looking at the way that these cars derailed, the lead engine went off the bridge and fell on the interstate. But the minute that the train separated, the automatic air brakes stopped the movement of the train. So most of the cars are still upright, other than the ones that fell on the interstate. So again, I may stress that the automatic air brake system is designed for just this type of thing. Also, I may say that some folks might say, well, the engineer may have tried to stop, but the air brakes failed, which is a chance of 1 in a million, because contrary to what most people think, the engineer is not in charge of the train, the conductor is. And the first thing the conductor does before a train leaves, whether it's freight or passenger, is he does a thorough air brake test to make sure that the air brakes are working. So this is just a real question mark. But from looking at your video, the fact that these cars remained upright on the rail after the air brakes set is a miracle that saved probably dozens of lives.
Well, and then you can tell by just the damage, especially with the cars off the tracks that did go down below, that smashed some of the vehicles, including, I don't know if you saw the front of that semi-cab that's crushed, and then you see the cars laying in the ditch there on the side.
Yes.
That train had to be going pretty fast around that corner.
There's no question about it. And the speed sign, you will notice that the speed sign says T30, that's for Talgos, and P for passengers, that's for regular passenger trains. And by the way, at 11 o'clock this morning, the southbound Amtrak Coast Starlight, which has 12 cars, sleepers, diners, and such, thank God it wasn't that train, because those cars are double level and the carnage would have been horrible.
Yeah, thank God. You can see this picture here. I mean, it's just extraordinary, the damage that people were pulled out of this alive. You know, the latest numbers that we have from the Associated Press is that 6 people were killed, and all those people we believe were on board the train. Earlier we were told that no one on the ground in those vehicles, at least at that moment, had died, but there were some serious injuries. We don't have an update yet. We're hoping that all of those people will make it, but when you look at the damage below to some of those vehicles, it's hard to believe that they would have survived that, isn't it?
Oh, unbelievable.
Yes, and I just got a message from our volunteers that run the Amtrak station in Olympia, and they said that some of our volunteers were on that train. And these are people that are retired, and they're our close friends, so we're just hanging in there to make sure that hopefully they weren't among the fatalities or the serious injuries.
That is just so sad to hear, which means you may have known some of those people.
Well, again, I'm looking at your aerial footage. Thank God for those automatic air brakes, because those cars are almost all of them upright, and if automatic air brakes had not worked, the whole train would have gone onto the interstate.
Robert,
and all the cars would have been crushed.
We're getting another news update here. This is from the Associated Press. Again, we are also working to independently confirm this, but the Associated Press now reports, per a U.S. official, that a track obstruction was seen as a possible cause of this derailment, which means, when I say that to you, that means possibly something on the track, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, and the thing is that it's very easy to come to some basic conclusions. The train was going too fast. Why was it going too fast? We don't know that. Perhaps there was an obstruction on the track that kept the brakes from applying. Who knows? But the simple fact is that the brakes work when they were supposed to, and it limited the amount of carnage that actually happened.
I mean, you're right. At the end of the day, the brakes did work when they were supposed to, and as Glenn Farley was saying earlier, it's kind of a head scratcher as to why this happened because they tested these tracks over and over and over and over again, especially this stretch. They've tested this repeatedly. You saw a test at 3 in the morning, you said recently, and the safety record of these trains is extraordinary.
It's absolutely extraordinary, and on top of that, these new Siemens locomotives are the most advanced locomotives that have been constructed within the last 50 years. And to see, in fact, you're zooming in on the locomotive right now, to see that one of these engines, so everything this train had going for it, it had been tested over and over and over again. It had the latest technology in locomotives. So why this happened, we have yet to find out.
When you say it had the latest technology for safety, can you tell us what some of that would have been?
Pardon me?
When you say it had the latest safety features,
yes,
along with that
unfortunately,
braking system.
The braking system is standard, automatic air brakes.
Right.
That's on every train. It's been like that since the turn of the century. Unfortunately, this did not have positive train control, which has been mandated by the federal government. Unfortunately, positive train control, which would have stopped this train when it exceeded the 30-mile-an-hour limit, is very expensive, and the major railroads have had a difficult time applying it to the lines. And so, once again, there's been several major fatal train accidents because positive train control has not been implemented, but it is being implemented, and it will prevent this type of accident in the future.
And Robert, though, when you hear about possible track obstruction, doesn't that kind of throw everything else out the window? You could test this track a million times, you can have the latest and greatest technology, but if there's something on the tracks, doesn't that kind of negate all of that standard protocol leading up to that moment?
Absolutely, and something on the track for an engineer is a very, very difficult situation because you come upon it instantaneously, whether it's an automobile or debris or something of that nature. And by the nature of trains, when they're traveling at speed, even if you put the train in full emergency, which means that every car, every locomotive on the train immediately seizes brakes at the maximum possible force, the train keeps going. So all I can think of is if there was an obstruction on the track and the train ran over it and it kept the engineer from slowing the train down, that's another scenario that needs to be considered.
Okay. You know, that is one scenario, and the investigation is going to take some time before we really know how this all happened. But I do want to go back to this safety feature that you say we don't have on these tracks, that you said has been mandated, but is so very, very expensive. As an engineer, do you think that that's something that should be instituted?
Absolutely, because we're all humans, whether we're pilots or train engineers or whatever. Whatever the latest technology is that can back us up as human beings. And as an engineer, I can tell you that even running freight trains, you have to be on your game every second of the time. You never know what can be in front of you. And positive train control basically is based on GPS, where the computer knows exactly where the train is at any given time. And with positive train control, if it passes a red signal, or if it misses a speed restriction such as this, it automatically stops the train. So I know of no engineer that would be opposed to positive train control. It's definitely needed, particularly on lines that carry passenger trains. It was supposed to be implemented sometime last year. However, the cost was considerable, in the billions of dollars, and many railroads are implementing it. Amtrak is doing a fine job on implementing it on most of their lines. Regrettably, this particular line was built in 1890, and it was completely redone with automatic signals, new track, new ballast, high-speed capability. However, it was not yet set for positive train control.
Well, I know you talk about the cost of it, but you know, if it's your brother or your mother, your sister or father, it doesn't seem too expensive to a lot of us.
Right.
That's true. That's very true.
Robert Bregent, certified engineer with us, helping to guide through
so
this
grateful
mess
for
we're
your
looking at here.
expertise.
Thank you, sir.
Robert, thank you so much.